Slow and steady wins the race. Slow and steady also saves you for the race. What if I was to tell you that the tale of the tortoise and the hare was true? What do I mean by that? Well, simply, my name's Salvatore, 9 to 5 office worker, likes to sip espresso, wear his suit, lace up his running shoes, and cross the finish line faster than he ever thought possible. But in doing so, I kind of wanted to share a lesson that we've heard, a childhood tale, so to speak, of the case of the tortoise and the hare. So for those of you not familiar, I'm going to kind of share this and talk about how this applies to running and other aspects of life, but mainly running in this scenario, and how you can kind of use it to frame it for your own running training or seeking to, get better at anything as well. So in the case of the tortoise and the hare, the turtle goes at a certain pace, quite, slow and consistent. Whereas at the starting line, the hare guns out, determined to win the race. But in doing so, he gets cocky, he gets arrogant, he messes around. And then it turns out that the tortoise actually finishes before him. But in this scenario of the kind of cocky and arrogance in terms of how the hare kind of messed around, he knew he'd have plenty of time to finish the race. I kind of want to say that arrogance in the situation of running, or for me, was that it was actually more the point that the cocky arrogantness led to injury. So while kind of that's happening, the turtle's still going. And then, of course, in that time where you have to rest and recover, the turtle's still doing its thing and then crosses the finish line, whereas you just sitting, out of the race, or you can't even finish the race, which is kind of why I want to share this tale with you today. So kind of to give a bit of context of what I'm going through. So what happened was last year around December, and even kind of bled into January, I had really scaled up my running and really built up kind of like a lot of, I guess, addiction? No, a lot of an aptitude to running. So, I ran almost every day and I was running quite fast. I didn't kind of have a measured or steady, like the tortoise method of doing it. I was just kind of like, every run was fast, every run I was trying to get faster. There were certain days where I was really, really pushing it. And I kind of didn't understand the importance of not only rest, but also kind of the concept of being like slow and steady, which is what I'm going to share with you today, of course. So what do I mean by slow and steady, and how can I kind of break this down? So we've heard of the 80-20 rule, and basically that applies to running. So for 80% of the time, you want to be running really easy or really chill, kind of like at the tortoise pace almost. What do I mean by this? Well, a good and easy way to measure this is that you are going to be running in what's called a zone 2, or another way to look at it is a pace that you can actually hold a conversation, or another way I like to think as well is that this pace will be a pace that you can listen to a podcast, kind of digest what they're saying without breathing so heavily you find it annoying, you can't process it and you're frustrated. It's kind of like that space where you're running and the mind is actually quite free. So the point of this is, if we look at a pyramid, if we think of a pyramid as your like running training, a lot of the pyramid, the base and the lower levels are actually, or the bricks on the pyramid, if we will, are actually comprised of these slower runs, which is what I didn't actually understand back when I was kind of running, all out and running just all over the place. So that's kind of like what is actually more important than necessarily trying to get in as many faster runs as you can in the week. Because while those faster runs are great for building, next levels of fitness, you need to kind of temper that expectation. Otherwise, the arrogance that will come from that and thinking, oh, I can just do another one tomorrow or the day after and just really keep pushing, you will eventually, lead to some situation where you'll hurt yourself. And then that means you have to take time out and then start back up again. And you'll kind of have to start, if you kind of learn your lesson like I did and start back up again slower, you can actually, benefit from, the benefits of what running gives you. Because we know running's an amazing thing, right? And I think back to my time, if I could have just applied this situation of running more like the tortoise opposed to the hare, I would have been able to continue running and not taken as much time off or have that risk of injury in December. So by now I'd be so much quicker. So that's kind of like what I'm trying to get at in terms of why it's important. Because I guess with like running long distance, it's the goals that we should be setting ourselves is something that should be, like the race is almost something that never finishes. So with that in mind, wouldn't it make sense to go like consider like quite steady opposed to just kind of going like guns blazing? Because like if we think of an actual race physically and you kind of, run as fast as you can as soon as, it hits go, your legs will be overcome with lactic acid, which means that, they'll basically blow up and you'll have to kind of crawl or walk your way to the finish line. Versus if we could have been actually steady, we could have crossed it at a much faster, pace than if we kind of walk or jog or blow up our legs. But also what I'm also trying to get at is to get to the race itself, we have to kind of keep our body primed and ready for this. So it's kind of like, you don't have to win at every time you go for a run because it's kind of building to the overall picture. You need to be able to kind of get your body to a point where it's kind of, ready for, a certain intensity. And then that has to be measured, that has to be very specific. And then you kind of go back to, building that base brick by brick by brick, being patient, enjoying podcasts, listening to nice music on the slower run, being really aware of what your body's doing and how it's feeling. Kind of like that level of awareness that you're trying to really plug into how you feel so you can kind of, long term, really, continue the running. So that's like what I'm trying to share with you today. I'm just going to check if there's anything else that I want to mention in this. I'll give you a bonus tip. So when actually doing a 5K, being slow and steady, like I'm saying, for the first half, 2.5Ks, you want to be going at a speed that is obviously fast, but not your fastest. You want to kind of run it at a certain tempo or speed that you can do. And then the second half of the race is where we kind of kick it into gear because your body's warmed up, it's used to the speed, and that's kind of what we call a negative split. So that's when you want to really push for it because you've got that extra bit of energy because you saved it. And that's kind of where you'll be able to really, see really, really impressive results. So you kind of want to be really steady in that. So what I'm trying to get at today to conquer the mountain and conquer life is we need to understand the mountain is actually quite a long and arduous thing. So by being steady and going through upper and training for running in a very, deliberate, disciplined way of just running slow for most of our efforts, at a certain pace, a zone 2, a talkable, a podcastable listening pace, you'll be able to find that you actually be able to conquer that mountain or conquer quite a way up that mountain without necessarily feeling like, you've overexerted yourself, you've risked injury. You basically just keep going without stopping, but by going in such a measured and intelligent way, opposed to going like a little bit fast, stop, like go back a bit, and then like it's a very like linear progression. It doesn't kind of go like, you know what I mean? That's what I'm trying to get at today. So that with this, by being like more the tortoise than the hare, you can